Yo, what is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Blitz Sports Media. I'm Ryan Linklater, and I am back with the co-host Brady Penn. We are on the Blitz angle. What's up, early birds? Hope you're in the chat today. We will see you guys. I got my phone on. You can double hear me saying what's up in the chat. Hope you guys had a great Week 13 slate in fantasy football, betting, whatever it is. And I hope you all enjoyed the slate. Brady, got any early takeaways from these games?
Definitely a few. One is that two teams that we thought could be big contenders this year, I think were eliminated today, essentially, the 49ers and the Bengals. I think both of them are done for the season, which is obviously something neither of us were predicting. I think we both had them, both those teams winning 11 or more games, and now it looks like both of them could finish the year below 500. For the 49ers, it's an injury thing, really, in my opinion, and just a lack of cohesion throughout the entire year. And then for the Bengals, it's just a defensive thing. That's my big two takeaways, I think, right now. We're starting to see the picture come together on both sides, and it looks like neither side is going to have the Niners or the Bengals in it. And looks like we lost Ryan for a minute. So everybody, drop your comments for what your biggest takeaways of the weeks were. One thing when Ryan gets back in, I want to talk about is, do we think that this could be the year for the Buffalo Bills? Because I'm not being reactionary off of this game. I've been wondering it for a few weeks, and I tweeted about this before the live. I know that they had that stretch where they lost to Baltimore and Houston back-to-back. They looked really bad. The weapons weren't looking good. But ever since they traded for Amari Cooper, even though he hasn't played in every single game, the Bills' offense has looked really good, and the defense has looked just as good, if not better. So I'm starting to wonder if we should bet on the Buffalo Bills to win the Super Bowl this year. I think the people want to see a Bills-Lions Super Bowl. I've been saying it, but we'll see what we get. I mean, it's hard to beat the Chiefs, and they're going to be a hard out. So we'll see. We'll also see when we get Ryan back. Ryan's trying to figure out some technical difficulties right now. And let's just kind of go across the league again. All of you drop your comments below while we wait on Ryan. One team I want to talk about is the Falcons in the NFC South. The Falcons looked almost like a sure bet to win the NFC South just 4 weeks ago. Since then, they've lost 3 games in a row. Kirk Cousins had a 4-interception game on Sunday against the Chargers, and pretty much was the sole reason that the Falcons did not get the victory at home at Mercedes-Benz. One of them was a pick six, and the Chargers offense really didn't do much against the Falcons defense that has struggled this season. But I mean, Kirk Cousins, I see Falcons fans calling for Michael Penix to start. I see them turning on Kirk, and I don't know if the Falcons are going to turn around or not. They would have been still feeling fine if the Bucs had ended up losing that game to the Panthers, but Baker clutched up, led a long drive down the field to send it to overtime, and then the Buccaneers forced a turnover in OT and ended up the offense, especially Rachaad White, set up a game-winning field goal. So now those two teams are tied in terms of record atop the NFC South. And I know the Falcons own the head-to-head tiebreaker, but at this point it's like 5 games left for both teams, and the Falcons offense is going to have to pick it up because Kirk Cousins, I think his last 3 games, has a 0-6 touchdown to interception ratio. And obviously that is just never going to cut it, especially for a quarterback being paid that much. Looking at the NFC West, I know we talked about the 49ers and all of that. The Niners right now in the West, they're cooked. We talked about that. The Seahawks, I think, are going to win the division. The Arizona Cardinals, they're chasing behind, but they've lost a game head-to-head to the Seahawks, so no one's really sure what's going to happen in this division. The Rams looked really, really bad against the Saints today, and they ended up pulling out the win at the end, but they had a scoreless first half, I believe. That division is all over the place. We thought it might be one of the top divisions in football this year, and every team is disappointed. The Niners are below 500. They've had a ton of injuries. The Seahawks are really inconsistent, but they're leading the division, have won enough division games, including one against the Cardinals and the 49ers. And the Rams were super, super unhealthy. Is it going to be too late to get back on track? I don't know. But yeah, it's a very, very interesting division. And then we go to the NFC East. Washington Commanders. They get the dub today. Big time win against a really, really bad team in the Tennessee Titans. Cowboys got the win on Thanksgiving over the Giants. Giants are terrible. We all know they're tanking right now. and will likely be looking for a quarterback. Almost certainly will be looking for a quarterback in the offseason. It's just a matter of if it'll be the draft or free agency. But the Eagles are the absolute class of the NFC East. To me, I think that's pretty obvious. And the question with the Eagles is, are they better than the Lions? Are they good enough to beat the Lions? And you have to kind of look across the board because Saquon is having an amazing year. And I think both these quarterbacks are pretty even. I think Jared Goff probably had a better year, better last year or two, honestly, than Jalen Hurts. But we have at the same time seen Jalen Hurts take his team to the Super Bowl. We've seen Jared Goff take his team to the Super Bowl back in the 2018 season with the Rams. But, I mean, that was a really, really good team. So was Jalen Hurts's. But we saw Jalen Hurts have a really good performance in the Super Bowl. We saw Jared Goff have a pretty poor one where he only put up 3 points. So who do you trust more between the quarterbacks? It's a toss-up for me. And then you look at the rest of the offensive groups. Saquon Barkley is amazing. The Lions have an elite running back duo in David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. And then you look at the defenses. Honestly, on paper, I believe that most NFL fans are trying to tell you that the Eagles' defense is better than the Detroit Lions. And I do not buy that. It's crazy because I'm not sure the Lions have even a top 5 most talented group defensively in football, but they're second in DVOA. At least they were heading into this week behind their division rival, the Minnesota Vikings. So this Lions defense is really good, but the Eagles defense has been stepping up. They shut down the Ravens offense for the most part today after the first quarter. And I think both these teams are really dangerous. I lean Detroit, but we've got Ryan back here. And
Dude, thank God, man.
we'll let
The
him
audio.
we're talking about the Eagles and the Lions and comparing those two teams at the top of the NFC.
Yeah, sorry about all the chats I missed, y'all. StreamYard was cheesing me and I wasn't getting any audio from Brady, so I had to leave, close browser, join back. And you're right. One of my biggest takeaways from this week is that the Eagles are a great football team. I keep mentioning that the Eagles are one of these top football teams in the NFL due to their amazing defense that they're rolling out there. The defense honestly has an argument for the best defense in the NFL right now, outside of possibly Buffalo, who played tonight, who has been stellar this season. And, what awesome about that Eagles defense is that they can stop the run. And, with Baltimore, we know once you stop the run against them, they're a completely different team. And they kind of get out of game script, and it didn't work very well. We saw Baltimore actually jump out to the lead against the Eagles in this one. And then, it didn't necessarily work out too well from that point against, what I think is concerning, though, with the Eagles, right, are these slow starts between, we mentioned the Ravens with the slow starts. The Eagles had these slow starts too, and then the Eagles came back, and obviously Saquon Barkley balled out after that point. But the Eagles have a real argument for being the best team in the NFC. You talk about the Lions' injuries and what they're going through right on the defensive side of the ball. The Eagles are healthy. Devonta Smith will be back soon, and I honestly think that their defense could carry them to an NFC championship and kind of match up well with this Lions offense. I don't know. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, this Eagles defense has been playing well. I think they did a really good job shutting down the Ravens' rushing attack, or at least putting the Ravens in situations to where they had to pass the ball more often than not. But I'm still taking the Detroit Lions. I know they played a really tight game with the Bears. It's a division rivalry game, and the Bears are 4-8, whatever they are, but they've been competing really well, especially ever since
They've been better than their record suggests.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, the last 3 games they've lost in overtime. They've lost because of poor clock management, and they've lost because of a blocked field goal against 3 of maybe the 4 best NFC teams. So yeah. I don't think the Bears are a 4-8 level team. I think it was a Thanksgiving short week rivalry game. And I'm still going with the Lions. I think the Lions have the better defense this season. I think the Lions have the better coaching. I think the Lions have the better offense. I think they're better on the offensive line. I think A.J. Brown is the best pass-catching weapon, but I would take the sum of Detroit's parts. And honestly, as good as Saquon Barkley has been, I think I would rather have that change of pace duo, that dynamic duo between Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. But it's really close, and I know that we've seen the Eagles make it already 2 years ago. But I'm still thinking the NFC is Detroit's to lose.
Yeah, 100%. And, like I said, I missed y'all questions when I had that technical difficulties. Trade dropped. Bryce Hall scored 6 points. I messed up on that one. I thought Bryce was going to be in for a great matchup against the Seahawks' weak rush defense. Didn't work out necessarily too well. And that Jets offense is a mess. We'll talk about that one a little bit later when we get to the Seahawks. But
Aaron Rodgers sucks.
He does. He's not good at football. What did you think of the 49ers efforts tonight? For me, personally, this team looked deflated after the Christian McCaffrey injury. I thought they actually like played well enough in those first 2 drives. I'm like, okay, San Francisco showed up tonight. McCaffrey goes down, everything changes. The offense stalls out. They go backwards. Then they're forced to kick a long field goal, doesn't go, and then Buffalo scores in the first play. The game was over after that point.
Yeah, I mean, they grinded out a long field goal drive early on to start the game. The Bills didn't score their first points until the very end of the first quarter. Like the Niners were very much in that thing. And like you said, Christian McCaffrey goes down and it changes the dynamic of the entire offense. An offense that's already without Brandon Ayuk. And, I've seen people firing off their Brock Purdy is overrated takes. While I don't think that Brock Purdy is a $60 million quarterback, which he could get, I think he's good. And I don't think that Brock Purdy, even if this wasn't a good game tonight, I don't think he's been terrible this year. I don't think he's been bad this year. I think this Niners team has just been too injured. We've seen Christian McCaffrey didn't even play until 2 or 3 weeks ago. Ayuk out for the year. Debo's been in and out dealing with his own things. Kittle's missed a few games. You've had Trent Williams miss. You've had Purdy himself miss. You've had Hufanga get hurt. You've had Nick Bosa miss games. You've had Fred Warner hurt. You haven't seen Dre Greenlaw. Like this team is just a really talented team that I think got too injured and was never able to get momentum established at all this season. And they've been fighting. They've been playing from behind the 8 ball all season long. I fully expect the Niners to be a good football team again next season, assuming they don't end up making the playoffs. And I think that's really all there is to it. Any Niners fan or NFL media personality that's calling for Kyle Shanahan's job, I really question your credibility.
You know what? I actually think that Kyle Shanahan deserves a lot more. I don't want to say a lot to be thrown under the bus more, but
I'm not saying he's perfect, but don't fire him.
No, I don't think they're going to fire him. I don't think he should be fired because, he's going to get picked up really quickly regardless of where he goes. But I mean, the problems, dude, it's the same problems every week. This team never makes adjustments. Defensively, it's always the same scheme. And if they don't have the right coordinator during that season, they're not very good.
They need to bring Saleh back.
They do need to bring Saleh back. I don't know if that'll happen, though. But, I just don't Kyle Shanahan's just making me frustrated. It's just very annoying watching Kyle Shanahan this season. And what's annoying about the 49ers roster is they have all this money tied up at the top end of their roster. They're not going to be able to fix these holes on the defense that they're showing week in and week out. They're not going to be able to fix the offensive line that struggled a good amount this season. So, as a Niners fan, you have to be pretty worried about this team's future if they ever have these superstars go down like they did this year. I don't expect the injuries to be as bad next season. They'll be one of the best teams in the NFC next season. Don't get me wrong. But when these guys start to age, man, it's going to get concerning. And then you're talking about that Brock Purdy contract potentially coming up. That's another big problem. I mean, do you go out there and pay Brock Purdy and cut some of these all-pros that they have? I mean, that's what they're kind of looking at right now.
I'm not paying Brock Purdy $60 million if that's what he wants. I've gone to a Super Bowl and won the NFC with Jimmy Garoppolo, and I don't think we need to stoop that low. But I think that this is one of the more QB-friendly systems in the league.
100%. And we see a lot of talented guys excel in this offense. But, the reality of the situation is you can't necessarily go out and change your quarterback situation because the 49ers, like you said, Brock Purdy's a good quarterback, and I think they're going to stick with him
for
a little bit.
Here's an idea. What happens if the Vikings decide to bring back Sam Darnold, sign Sam Darnold to a 2-year contract? The 49ers will have a decent draft pick. Is there any way that Kyle Shanahan could look into J.J. McCarthy?
They ain't trading J.J. McCarthy.
I don't know, man. I don't know. It's going to be hard to let Sam Darnold walk out the door the way that he's played this year.
I just don't think they're going to bring it back. I just don't see it. The J.J. invested so much in J.J. I think Vikings fans still understand that J.J.'s the guy. I think everybody in that building knows J.J.'s the guy. Sam's done great.
I wouldn't say that would happen, by the way. I'm just saying it's an interesting idea. I have seen rumors all season long of could the Vikings part ways with J.J. McCarthy. And if they decided that, hey, we'll listen to offers on him, if I'm the Niners and Brock Purdy comes to me asking for $60 million, I'm trying to make a move there.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting for sure. Let's talk about that NFC West race. The Seahawks obviously got that win over the Jets. The Rams got a big win against the Saints, which, there was a tight game throughout in that one. And then you saw the Cardinals fall to the Vikings. What are your takeaways from the 3 NFC West teams as this division race heats up?
Right now it's looking like the Seahawks will win the division, but I still think that the Cardinals are the best team in the West, which isn't saying a lot. I think this division is very mid, but I think the Cardinals have been the best team in it, and I think that they dealt with a really tough loss today. They were winning, let the Vikings come back and win by a point, 23-22, and the reason why was the Cardinals only scored one touchdown on 6 red zone possessions. Their red zone offense was not good today. And I thought Kyler Murray actually had a pretty solid performance. But again, in that red area, he was struggling to find Marvin Harrison. He was a little bit off on some of his deep throws today. And the Vikings were able to come back as a result just from Sam Darnold and Justin Jefferson playing pitch and catch. And, I believe that the Cardinals have a game against the Seahawks remaining. I could be wrong there.
Yes.
But I think they do. So they could still control their destiny. They're a game behind right now. But we'll see. I mean, I like Arizona the most, but the Seahawks, all of a sudden, they've reeled off like 3 or 4 wins in a row, I think, or 3 out of 4, something like that.
Yeah, I think it's 3 out of 4.
They're playing well, and they're playing well at the right time. So we'll see. I think between the Cardinals and the Seahawks, Geno Smith is the more veteran quarterback, obviously. He has been to the playoffs in Seattle, even though Kyler has made it once early on in Arizona a couple years back. Got embarrassed in that game. We've seen Geno around for a while, and I think that the total personnel leans in favor of the Seahawks. Talked about how much better the Seahawks defense has been since getting Ernest Jones, and that continued today. Really only gave up 2 real scores. Obviously, the Seahawks gave up a kickoff return touchdown. But, I mean, right now you have to lean Seattle. You have to give them the edge, and I'm not sure that any team from this division wins a playoff game, but
No,
probably have to lean Seattle right now.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see, like, we'll talk about the NFC South in a little bit here, but the 3 and the 4 seed in the NFC seems pretty bad. Like, these teams will probably lose in the first week of the playoffs.
Wild cards are better. The NFC North is better.
100%. I agree. And what's interesting about the West, right? Each of these teams have so many flaws right now that other teams are just kind of picking on. Like the Rams, they have a defensive problem. 49ers, obviously the injuries all around it made this roster pretty weak. The Seahawks have a very poor offensive line and a very young defense that's still learning how to play. The Arizona Cardinals are just the most inconsistent team in football right now that no one seems they can get a read on. So it's basically, like you mentioned, a toss-up for this division. And, I hate to do this. I think the Rams are going to still be.
Oh, no.
Dude, I think the Rams are still going to be in it. I'm
are never giving up
guns,
on the Rams.
I am going to ride with the Top Guns until the wheels fall off. I'm going to ride with Stafford.
So bad for a month.
Puka. I'm going to ride with them, man. I got to ride with the good players.
I have to disagree here because I do think the Cardinals, they're not experienced. They are not the most high-end talented team, and that's why I'm riding with the Seahawks right now. But let's just look at their last 4 games. Their last 4 games. Embarrassing 15-point performance at home, primetime loss to the Dolphins. Barely eke out a win on the road in Foxborough by 6 points. Get blown out on Sunday Night Football by the Eagles. And then come out scoreless in the first half and eke out a win on the road in New Orleans. I mean, they're just not impressive.
We good.
What's their upcoming here?
They have the Bills.
They got the Bills next. After that, it goes Niners, Jets, Cardinals, Seahawks. So, I can see it. I don't think what you're saying is preposterous.
The thing about the NFC West is all these teams play each other at least 3 times.
That Rams line is just so bad. That might be the worst unit out of any of these 4 teams have, in terms of groups on the field. That Rams line.
Hey, the NFC West is not showcasing good offensive lines this year. That is very true.
I will say the Niners, I think, have actually been better than people think. They've fallen off the last week, but
I think it's their left side of the line. Like when Trent Williams has been out, that left side's really struggled, and we've seen the run game basically just go dead, except for tonight on that left side. Let's talk about the NFC
CMC, and it's a completely different group.
Yeah, let's talk about the NFC South race. Obviously, the Buccaneers won a thriller. I bet Panthers money line when they had Bryce Young in the fourth quarter down. I think it was 4 points. Yeah, I had Bryce Young to go and score that touchdown. He wound up doing it, and then Baker Mayfield balled out, got in a good position. Unfortunately, Chuba Hubbard fumbled when the Panthers had a chance to put it away. But, Bryce Young looks great. Baker Mayfield had a very good game. Bucky Irving is an absolute superstar in the making right now. Dude is a really good football player. And then the Falcons, they absolutely took a dud this week. this team is falling apart, Brady, down the stretch. And Kirk Cousins, 4 interceptions. We could be getting Michael Penix sooner than people think. What is your take on the NFC South? I know we both think the Bucs were going to win the division heading into last week. I mean, what are your takes now going forward? Is it the Bucs division to lose?
I don't think so. I mean, these two teams are tied still record-wise, and that's the one thing the Falcons have is that they have the head-to-head right now. And the Falcons do have a really tough game coming up next week in the Vikings, but I honestly think I don't know who I'm picking yet. It could be a get-right game for the Falcons because the Vikings have won 4 in a row, 5 in a row maybe, but they've done it to me like kind of like the Rams in very unconvincing fashion. I think today was their best win of the streak, but before that, it's like squeaking out against the Titans, squeaking out against the Jaguars. It hasn't been very good. I mean, they had a really good game with the Bears last week, who we talked about being better than their record. But after that Vikings game, the Falcons get the Raiders and the Giants back to back. After that, they get the Commanders, which could be a tough game, especially on the road. And then they get the Falcons, or not the Falcons, they get the Panthers at home to end the year. So out of their last 5 games, 3 of them are the Raiders, the Giants, and the Panthers. 2 of those, at the very least, should be automatic wins. And the Panthers right now don't look like an automatic win. I would still pick the Falcons in that one. And if they can if them and the Bucs both finish at 9-8, the Falcons win the division because of the head-to-head play. You look at who the Buccaneers have remaining, and I want to say it's a little bit more challenging of a schedule. I can't remember. They do have the Raiders next week. Then they have to take on the Chargers, who the Falcons play today. They have the Cowboys after that. Honestly, it's a pretty even schedule. They got Chargers, Cowboys, Panthers, Saints, their final 4. So it'll be interesting. Basically, the Falcons just need to be even with the Buccaneers the rest of the way. We'll see if they can do that. I think the Bucs are more talented, but between injuries and falling in the hole early, they might have put themselves just a bit too far away from being able to catch up with the Falcons.
I'm worried about Kirk Cousins, dude. We've seen with Aaron Rodgers his struggles this season. If you looked at the stats that they put up during the game, that graphic, Cousins when he's pressured versus not pressured, dude has over 10 interceptions now when pressured. He had 4 today.
Well, the last 3 games, his touchdown to interception ratio is 0-6.
I mean, he's been really bad. Like, he's making bad reads that aren't just like, it's not even physical. It's just him making bad reads.
Yeah,
And,
he completely lost that game for them today. Completely.
100%. And I'm concerned. Like, Kirk is not a mobile guy. And if he's making these type of reads as a pocket passer, I mean, that's not looking good for his future in Atlanta when they have a young rookie who is sitting there waiting to go play quarterback that they invested a lot of draft capital in. And if Kirk is not going to get the job done this season after I think it was a 6-3 start, I think they go to Penix next season. Like, it is concerning for Kirk's outlook. We've seen Rodgers, who is one of the best quarterbacks all time, completely fall off this season. And, he had the Achilles injury. Cousins had the Achilles injury. I'm not convinced they go with Kirk Cousins next season at quarterback.
We got an announcement right here. Coach Shanahan just came out and said that Christian McCaffrey suffered a potentially season-ending PCL injury. So not looking good for Christian McCaffrey, not looking good for the Niners, and not looking good for CMC fantasy owners.
No, it's not, dude. I mean, if you held Jordan Mason ahead of the waiver wire and this tough stretch, you're going to be in a good spot in your fantasy football championships. Can we talk about Bryce Young though? This guy is a dog right now, dude. Like, I just want to give him his props because, he's been through a lot and he looks like a very good football player right now in fantasy football. Lovie Smith held Jordan Mason, Lovie. But what I'm saying, dude, I mean, Bryce Young is a good football player right now, and it's
Bryce
very
Young
encouraging.
The best second-year quarterback in the NFL this season.
Did you see how packed it was in Carolina?
Yes, I don't think that's too reactionary to say. C.J. Stroud has shown us for long enough this season, even with Nico Collins back, that it is a sophomore slump for him. And I believe in C.J. Stroud to still be a long-term good quarterback. I believe that he'll turn it around next year and that they will shore some things up, especially along that offensive line. That should be the pick with their first rounder this year. But Bryce Young, to me, has played the best out of any of the 4 second-year guys between him, Richardson, Stroud, and Levis.
Yeah, it's definitely been interesting for sure. One of the things, let's talk about the AFC side of things. The Chargers got that win over the Falcons. It's a big game for them this week against the Chiefs. Only 3 games back in the division right now. And if the Chiefs win, they lock it up. I think we both expect the Chiefs to win the AFC West, not rest, but it's actually closer than people think. The Chargers
Win
are
the
knocking on the
AFC
door.
West to get some rest.
Dude, if they clip, I mean, it'll be interesting to see what the Chiefs do. I know a lot of people are talking about the Chiefs need this bye, but I mean, even if they do get that 2 seed and have the 2 seed locked up, it seems like they might have a 2 seed locked up before the last week of the regular season. Why not rest your starters that last week like they did last year?
Well, I saw one Chiefs fan's perspective. I want to get yours here. They said that they would rather not have the bye just because, like, last year, the playoff run felt like the Miami game at home really kickstarted them in that first round, that opening round. It got them focused. They were able to clean some things up because if you remember, like you said, they rested their starters the last week. The week before that was a tight, hard win against Jake Browning and the Bengals. And the week before that was the Raiders game, the famous Raiders game on Christmas. So they weren't coming in hot from the regular season. They got hot and stayed hot off of that Dolphins game, it felt like. So what do you feel like? Do you think it's more valuable to get this bye? I know we saw Chris Jones complaining this week about the Chiefs not having a late season bye, having 3 games in 10 days or whatever it was. And it's an interesting perspective. We talked about the Chiefs being tired here for a few weeks, and right now they really do look tired. And I don't think either of us will ever count them out until they're actually eliminated. But it's fair to ask, like, are they in danger of losing this 1 seed to the Buffalo Bills?
I do think they are in danger. The Bills are a better team right now than the Chiefs. The Chiefs have
If the
struggled.
Bills beat Detroit, they very well might get it.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Like the Chiefs are playing bad football. They're playing sloppy football right now, and this week they got lucky to win that game. And I do agree with you that they picked it up against the right team in Miami, and that was kind of a get right game. But it was the bye week. The bye week is what helped them kind of just get to that point. And then if they beat Pittsburgh and they aren't if they're tied for Buffalo, let's say going into the last week, they beat Pittsburgh, who's likely the 3 seed in the AFC. Rest your starters in week 17, treat that as a bye week. It's the same thing as last year. You just go and run the table starting in the wild card round, not the divisional round, but you still get your bye week in week 17. I think that's the most important thing for the Chiefs is they need to find a way to at least get a bye week in week 17 or that bye week in the wild card round. I think either way, if they don't get a bye week heading into the playoffs, this team is going to be drained. They've been through so much the last 3 seasons. And like you mentioned, Chris Jones mentioned it, 3 games in 10 days coming up here after, I think it's the Browns game. It starts with the Browns game in 2 weeks. That's a tough stretch for any team, and especially a team that's played more football than anybody in the last 3 years, gearing up for another playoff run. They need a bye week more than anybody at this point.
Well, the thing is, you look at the Bills, their 2 losses are in Baltimore and in Houston in weeks 4 and 5. They're unbeaten in Buffalo. And you saw they are comfortable playing in that cold weather. They're comfortable playing in that snow. And I know Kansas City gets very, very cold too. I don't think the Chiefs would be uncomfortable in that situation the way the Niners look tonight. But that's a really loud stadium. That is a hard place to play. And honestly, last year they had the Chiefs on the ropes. They had a lot of injuries when the Chiefs had to come play in Buffalo, and Patrick Mahomes played a phenomenal game. But if you remember, it was like A.J. Klein came out of retirement, was on vacation the week before, and had to come cover Travis Kelce man-to-man. They didn't have half their secondary. Like, if we get remotely healthy versions of both these teams and they have to play in Buffalo, I know I've said it's going to be really hard for me to pick against Kansas City in any game because it will be, but it might be even harder for me to pick against Buffalo if they play each other in that stadium for the 2nd year in a row in the playoffs.
And you know what? I'll talk about this with Buffalo real quick. What concerns me with Buffalo this postseason is their run defense. I know they get Matt Milano back. We'll see if that has an impact, but they're struggling against the ground right now. Like we saw with Christian McCaffrey, what this team was able to do against the Bills on the ground. If teams aren't able to attack on the ground, and we saw the Ravens bully the Bills earlier on this season, we saw the Texans kind of do the same thing with Joe Mixon, not to the extent the Ravens did. But if the Bills get matched up with the Ravens, dude, that is a brutal matchup for the Bills, even if it is at home. I don't think they match up well against a run-first team, dude. I just think if the Bills were to lose this season, in the postseason especially, I think it'd be more to a team like Baltimore, Philly, even Detroit match up very well against this Bills defense. And, Josh Allen can play Superman all he wants, but they do need to stop on defense. And that's been Buffalo's biggest kryptonite in the postseason is they can't get off the field on defense whether or not that's against Patrick Mahomes. We've seen Joe Burrow do it. And I think that's the thing I'm reserved about with Buffalo, but Josh Allen's playing the best football of his career, and the secondary is very good with Greg Rousseau and Von Miller. Von Miller's having a resurgent season as well. Those pieces I like. It's the run defense that concerns me about Buffalo's long-term hopes this postseason and depending on their matchup.
Yeah, I'm honestly not super concerned. I think that would be their biggest concern, and I wrote about it in my mid-season. What's the concern for every division leader? That's what I put down as their run defense. But I just think this team is really strong right now, and I think that the Ravens honestly might be cooked. Just the way they look today.
Think so?
They look like just an unfocused team way too often. The offense just has little things they do wrong. Like they'll get a big play, have a big time penalty. Lamar will take a dumb sack, or like there was one play today. He was lucky when he got sacked to not be ruled a fumble, trying to just like flick it away, and the ball just flies out of his hands. The defense actually played one of their best games of the year, but once the offense kept consistently not scoring past the first quarter, the defense eventually gave way in the fourth, and Saquon and the Eagles really controlled the game and finished it off with a big Saquon Barkley touchdown run. I think if they play in Buffalo, I would be very comfortable taking the Bills. I know it happened back in week 4 in Baltimore. I think this Bills team was still finding their identity. Keon Coleman's in his 4th game. And the biggest thing I mentioned, even though he hasn't played in all these games, he's just added a layer to this offense. They're undefeated since the Amari Cooper trade. They haven't lost since they went out and got Amari Cooper, and Khalil Shakir has performed better. When Keon Coleman has played, he has looked really good. And the run game is stronger than it's ever been in Buffalo with James Cook this year. And was it Ty Johnson? The two of them have been really, really good. Even Ray Davis, they've got a good running back trio. The offensive line is playing really well. And as a football fan, I'm hoping that we get Bills Chiefs Part 4 in the playoffs again this year, whether it's an Arrowhead or Buffalo.
Yeah, let's talk about the Steelers and Bengals. Obviously, it looks like the AFC playoff picture is really taking shape here, where it's the Broncos, Dolphins, or Colts for that 7 seed.
I think we know all our division winners for sure.
Yeah, I think what's interesting is the Bengals defense is so bad, dude. Like this team
36-year-old Russ 400 yards.
Yes, they literally let Danger Russ post prime go for 403 tutties today, and I don't think I've ever seen the Steelers score 40 points since the Triple B era.
And that's with a pick 6 too. Like he had a pick 6 and then just locked in.
Yeah, and Joe Burrow didn't play his best football today by any means. I don't think he played great, but I mean, what are you supposed to do when your defense allows a touchdown every single drive? So what are your outlooks on the Steelers? Can they hold on to this division lead? And can the Bengals kind of figure things out next season? I do think Zach Taylor, the writing's on the wall, he will not be back next season. But what do the Bengals do on that defense to fix it up? And I don't think it's paying T. Higgins.
No, I think you literally might just have to set this defense on fire and just completely start over.
I'm sure the Chiefs are going to be happy that Lou Anarumo is a free agent.
Yeah, he's out of there for sure. And honestly, does he do anything besides do well against the Chiefs? Like
I'm not sure. I mean, like they were a decent defense except this year, but I mean, outside of the Chiefs games, he hasn't necessarily been the best, coordinator game to game.
Right. So I'm honestly not sure about him. I don't know where you go on the defense. There's too many problems. The secondary is bad. The D-line's bad. The run defense is bad. Everything's just really bad. And Trey Hendrickson's only getting older. I think, honestly, he could be a trade asset this offseason because I think he's getting paid a pretty good contract. And I think a few other guys are too. Maybe Sam Hubbard, Logan Wilson. Those could be guys that are on the block. The secondary just needs a complete rehaul. The only one I even have faith in at all is DJ Turner. And I just think, the Bengals, they've got a lot of soul searching to do. T. Higgins probably gone, whether he becomes a Charger or a Patriot or wherever else he may go. I think he's gone. They're going to have to pay Jamar Chase a ton of money. Joe Burrow is already almost going to be 30, I believe. I think he's going to be like 29 years old next season or something. So honestly, this is why it's so important. This is why I will never blame the LA Rams for doing what they did a few years ago, putting all their chips on the table and just going all in when they saw they had a chance to win the Super Bowl. It is not a given when you're a good team and you go to a Super Bowl or you go to a conference championship and you lose. The gut instinct of every fan is, especially when it's a young team, well, we'll be back. The window is so open. We will be back, no question. And the Bengals almost got back the next year in 2022 and lost to the Chiefs, obviously, very in the last minute. But there is no given in the NFL. There's no given that your window is going to be open for 5 years. There's no given that you will be back. Like I, I'm personally, I can totally get going all in. And there are teams that do it right, like the Rams. There are teams that do it wrong, like the Jets. But maybe that's what the Bengals should have done at a certain point.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting to see. I do think the Bengals have a lot of mixing to do. And, you mentioned Trey Hendrickson as a trade candidate. The Chiefs actually did something similar, trading Justin Houston, towards the end of his prime and rebuilding that defense despite trading away their best player. It worked over time. And the Bengals definitely, this is not a 1-year rebuild on the defensive side of the ball. It's going to take a few years before that defense gets any better. And you mentioned Joe Burrow close to hitting 30. I mean, the window was open, especially in his rookie contract, but it's going to take a tough task, build this roster into a championship roster, especially considering that you have these Steelers and the Ravens in the division. It looks like the Browns are going to have a super high draft pick. Who knows if they're going to be picking a quarterback who already have a pretty decent roster. So nothing's getting easier for the Bengals, and I'm not necessarily convinced that, that takes a few years ago, and even heading into this season, the Bengals, Bills, and Chiefs were in the upper echelon of the AFC above all these teams. It's just not the case. The Bengals have not been that team. The Bengals have gotten so much credit for going to the Super Bowl and beating the Chiefs, I think all the way in 2021 now, that people think the Bengals are one of these top teams in the NFL over the last 3-4 seasons. They've struggled the last 2 years. Obviously, they had a great 2-year run, but outside of that, it hasn't really been a sustained success in Cincinnati. And that's why you're going to find Zach Taylor looking for a new job this offseason.
100%. And I had people that were calling me crazy I was questioning the Bengals this offseason, and I drank the Kool-Aid a little bit. I think I had them like 11-6, 12-5. But deep down, especially going into the season, I had major concerns about the defense. I had major concerns about the offensive depth, about the offensive line still, which has been probably the best Joe Burrow has had, but still has not been good. And people were telling me, oh, they're the team to beat the Chiefs. They're the team that's going to compete with the Chiefs the most. Bills are done. They lost Diggs. The Texans aren't there yet, which that part was true. It's like, oh, the Ravens aren't going to be better than the Bengals. Trust Joe Burrow, T. Higgins, and Jamar Chase. There were a lot of holes there. And some people didn't want to see it because of Joe Shiesty and all the aura or whatever. Freaking
all the one video of him spinning around in the snow in Buffalo.
Oh my Lord, dude. But no, the Bengals, they've got a long way to go. And like I said, the holes were there the whole time, and if you wanted to see them, you could.
Yeah, definitely going to be interesting to see. But hey, we really appreciate you guys tuning into the stream. Make sure you guys take a look at our VIP picks on Dub Club. We will put a link in the description below. We hit on 7 of our VIP picks today, cashing us in on a plus 3,000 parlay. So shout out to all you guys riding with us today. Hit that comment button, leave a comment, drop your hottest NFL take, hit that subscribe button. We just hit over 300 subscribers and have gained over 15 in the last 2 days. Shout out to you guys for popping in and subscribing to our channel. And we'll catch you guys next time on Blitz Sports Media.
Yes, sir.